Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to get started this morning with the latest on Hurricane Beryl, which continues to create devastation in the Caribbean as it tracks towards Jamaica.
The storm is expected to hit Jamaica directly or pass near it sometime later today. At least 7 people have already been killed in this record-setting storm. Beryl briefly became a Category 5 hurricane yesterday with maximum sustained winds of 165 miles an hour, making it the strongest July hurricane on record. People living in Jamaica have spent the last couple of days preparing for the storm. Gas stations were crowded with cars and windows were boarded up as supplies started to run low.
Yesterday, hurricane hunters flew into the eye of the storm. This video you're seeing here shows the inside of the hurricane wall. Members of the Air Force Reserve's 403rd Wing are working around the clock, gathering data on Beryl as it continues to move west. President Biden says the U.S. is prepared to offer help.
People impacted islands and communities are in our prayers, and we stand by to provide assistance to them. Extreme weather events drive home a point that I've been saying for so long. Ignoring climate change is deadly and dangerous and irresponsible. These climate-fueled extreme weather events don't just affect people's lives. They also cost money, they hurt the economy, and they have a significant negative psychological effect on people.
We have team coverage, including meteorologist Angie Lassman with more on the forecast and Beryl's path. But let's begin with NBC News correspondent Sam Brock with the latest from Jamaica.
These are the breathless moments right now before Hurricane Beryl either makes direct landfall over the island of Jamaica or comes very close to it. The National Hurricane Center not exactly sure which of those 2 outcomes it's going to be, and that is a significant difference as you have conversations with locals here, and they tell you the last time that Jamaica took a direct hit from a major hurricane was Hurricane Gilbert back in the late 1980s, and it changed life as they know it. Will that repeat itself right now? The latest from the ground here, the Prime Minister of Jamaica declared the entire island a disaster area last night. He implemented a curfew from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m., and he gave the green light to authorized officers to evacuate low-lying areas, although as of early evening yesterday, there were no evacuations underway. There are hundreds of shelters potentially available to residents, but at this hour, it's not exactly clear how many of them are even open. As you look over my shoulder right now, you see all these homes. Plenty in the hills that look like they've had pretty decent construction. Folks here say that they have prepared for this moment with steel and concrete, the foundations in Jamaica really deep below the ground because there are so many hurricanes. But the roofs, they worry, could fly right off. And as you look around me, you'll see some homes that don't look like they're constructed solidly enough to necessarily withstand 130, 140 mile per hour winds. Conversations with folks on the ground as well say their biggest concern right now, loss of power and loss of telecommunications. They're not necessarily worried about the buildings. But putting that aside for a second, look at what has already happened across the Caribbean. You have Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Those islands look like, in some cases, just absolute distant versions of what they used to be, as there are huge pockets of homes shredded. So many there. On one island, according to the Prime Minister of Grenada, you have 90% of all homes either destroyed or severely damaged. Can that repeat here? Obviously, folks here in Jamaica don't necessarily have that level of concern yet. It's sort of part of the island DNA, if you will, not to get too worried about anything. But right now, everyone's antennas are up as we know that this system, this historic Hurricane Beryl, it is the strongest hurricane ever so far at this point of the season, is prepared right now to bear its grips down on the island of Jamaica. And folks here are just standing by to see what's happening. We'll be on top of all of it throughout the day. Sam Brock, NBC News.
All right, Sam, thank you.
Let's now bring in meteorologist Angie Lassman for more on Beryl's latest path.
Angie, what can you tell us?
Good morning, guys. Unfortunately, you heard what Sam was saying there. Jamaica is really the spot that we're going to watch here to see conditions deteriorating in the short term. But we've got a lot of folks that are still under these tropical alerts, and Beryl is far from done with here. We're going to see this be a system that we keep an eye on all the way through the weekend. So let's take a look at those tropical alerts. Of course, a hurricane warning in effect for Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. We still have some hurricane watches in effect for parts of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, dealing with the tropical storm warning at this point. But those conditions are going to continue to start to improve for folks there. And then looking ahead, we've got some hurricane watches and tropical storm watches in effect right now for the Yucatan Peninsula. That's the next area of land that we're going to watch for potential impacts from Beryl. So here's the latest. As of the latest update, we've got still a Category 4 hurricane. No surprise there. We're dealing with sustained winds of 145 miles per hour. It's sitting just to the east-southeast of Kingston, Jamaica, and of course, still moving at a pretty good clip. We saw it slow down with that last update. We were seeing a 22-mile-per-hour forward speed. Now it's a 20-mile-per-hour forward speed. Either way, it's not going to make much of a difference for the impacts that we'll see on specifically some of those places like Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Let's talk about the timing. So for Jamaica, it looks like midday we'll start to see things deteriorating. That means that the tropical storm force winds will likely arrive late into the morning hours. By midday and even later into the afternoon hours, the hurricane force winds, we'll see those outer rain bands impacting folks there, and the potential for, of course, that storm surge is going to skyrocket as the day goes on. Anywhere from 6 to 9 feet of storm surge is what we're talking about for folks in Jamaica. That means from flat ground. So 9 feet above your head is what we would be talking about for storm surge along the coast there. We'll also see additional rainfall on top of that. That means that the flooding concern, the mudslide concern is going to be there for our friends in Jamaica as well. And as we get into the late evening hours tonight and into early tomorrow morning, it's the Cayman Islands that we'll start to see some of those impacts. Now, the center of the storm still looks to be likely south of Jamaica, but we'll see potentially if where that kind of shapes up here over the next 12 hours or so, guys. But either way, we are far from done with Beryl as it continues over the next couple of days. Will it potentially impact the coast of Texas? Possibly. We'll have to wait another couple of days till we have a better certainty with that.
All right, we know you are busy, Angie. Thank you very much.
And we'll see you with the rest of the forecast in just a moment. All right, for the first time, a Democratic member of Congress is publicly calling on President Biden to drop his re-election bid following last week's shaky debate performance. The White House is blaming Mr. Biden's poor debate on extensive international travel in the weeks leading up to the event. But political pressure is growing for more answers. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has the latest.
President Biden's political future at the center of a storm.
We're going to face a tough summer.
As his only public event focused on extreme weather and emergency management. For 5 days, the president has not answered reporters' questions.
Mr. President, will you drop out of the race?
He has relied on scripted remarks using a teleprompter.
We've invested a record more than $50 billion.
The White House said it wants to turn the page after a debate performance crisis that some Democrats say has raised questions.
I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition?
The first public call to exit the race from a House Democrat.
We must call on him to give the ultimate sacrifice of saying that he will step aside because that's the best way to save our country.
Another Democrat with a warning.
I just want him to appreciate at this time just how much it impacts not just his race, but all the other races coming in November.
At the White House briefing,
he had a cold and a bad night. I would not see this as an episode.
Under repeated questioning, Karine Jean-Pierre defended the president as physically and mentally fit.
Is anyone in the White House hiding information about the president's health or his ability to do the job day to day?
Absolutely not.
The New York Times reports that in closed-door meetings, several current and former officials noticed the president increasingly appeared confused or listless or would lose the thread of conversations. NBC News reports that first son Hunter Biden joined meetings with the president and senior staff this week in the West Wing. Reaction from senior staff described as, what the hell is happening? The White House had this explanation.
He came back with his dad from Camp David. He walked him into the speech prep, and he was in the room.
The White House says it wants to get the president out there. He is scheduled to do an on-camera interview Friday, and they say a press conference next week. He will also be holding a video conference call with Democratic governors and talk with top congressional leaders for the first time since the debate last week.
Kelly O'Donnell, thank you.
Well, this morning, there's new fallout from the Supreme Court's landmark presidential immunity ruling. The state judge in former President Trump's New York hush money trial has postponed Mr. Trump's sentencing in the wake of that decision to sort out some new claims by Trump's legal team.
It was initially scheduled for July 11th, a week from tomorrow. Now it's set for September 18th. That's about 7 weeks before the election. In May, Mr. Trump was convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records. That case centered on a hush money payment made to adult film star Stormy Daniels in the lead up to the 2020 election.
For more on this, we have NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas both here in studio with us. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for being here. Vaughn, I'll begin with you. So the judge also granted a request by Mr. Trump's attorneys to file a motion seeking to overturn his guilty verdict. Walk us through what we're seeing here.
Right. This is not about necessarily the underlying charges that Donald Trump was found guilty of by this jury. Instead, it was the evidence that was allowed to be presented to the jury, which the defense attorneys for Donald Trump are claiming some of that evidence was protected by presidential immunity because they came under the context of official acts. That includes some tweets, some public speeches that Donald Trump had made. And so the case that Donald Trump's attorneys are making is that if, let's say, this trial had happened now, some of that evidence would not have been admissible under the Supreme Court's decision, and therefore the jury could have been tainted in the way that it ultimately made its determination. So therefore that motion is going to be presented in that argument made to Judge Merchan to have the trial thrown out.
Danny, let's get the legal perspective here. The judge has agreed to delay the sentencing. How much is the Supreme Court decision this week influencing all this? Does Trump have a chance of getting this conviction overturned or maybe getting a new trial?
When the Supreme Court's immunity decision first came out, I thought about the 4 different criminal cases against Donald Trump. One is already concluded. That's the New York criminal case. And of the 4, the initial thought was, well, this immunity decision affects the New York case the least. And that's because the allegations in the New York case have virtually nothing to do with an exercise of presidential power, unless you consider paying off a porn star something to do with the appointment power or directing troops in the field. You can see how that seems like a stretch. But hidden in the details is a fact that may end up threatening all of these criminal cases, which is, as Vaughn correctly pointed out, that the evidence of official acts may not have been admissible against Trump. And there was some evidence of his official conduct, witnesses, tweets, different things that may have been rendered inadmissible retroactively by the Supreme Court decision. And the court has to sort it out. I can't stress enough how important this is because the New York case arguably contained the least allegations of presidential conduct. So what does that say for the remaining 3 cases, which allege a lot more presidential activity?
Which is exactly what we are hoping Vaughn can give us a reminder on. What are those outstanding cases and how do we think this intersects with those?
Of course, the federal election interference case is going to be paramount. That was where the Supreme Court decision ultimately stemmed from. And so we are looking at an evidentiary hearing that Judge Chutkan, who is overseeing that federal election interference case, she is going to set a hearing, and there is going to be debate between the 2 sides on what ultimately charges are able to be brought against Donald Trump, but also what evidence. Again, this gets down to what tweets, right, did Donald Trump put out around January 6th? And are those technically official acts under the Supreme Court's decision? Of course, Jack Smith, the special counsel, wanted to use a great deal of what was out there publicly to show the motive and to show the conspiracy that he alleges that Donald Trump was a part of here. Of course, classified documents case could also be impacted because there is some distinction over whether Donald Trump in those closing days on Inauguration Day, those closing hours before Joe Biden was sworn in, when he flew down to Florida with some of those boxes, right? That's sort of the open question mark that is going to be hashed out in front of the courts.
Danny, while we have you, we should mention another big headline yesterday. Mr. Trump's former attorney, former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, disbarred in New York for spreading lies about the 2020 election. What does this mean for Giuliani's future as far as his ability to practice law or anything else?
It means he won't be able to practice law. Disbarment is the death penalty. And normally, when you are before a disciplinary board, the likely outcome is some form of discipline. It can range from something like just public censure. It can range from that to suspension. But the ultimate penalty is disbarment. Now, I will say that Giuliani's sins before the board are not the ordinary sins you see before disciplinary boards. The most common are failure to communicate with clients, or really the worst sin is stealing from your clients, taking from the trust fund, whatever, or the trust account, whatever the case may be. So this is an unusual set of facts. It's based mostly on false statements Giuliani made. But the bottom line was, once this was before the board, it was very likely that Giuliani was going to suffer some sort of very severe discipline. Disbarment is not a surprise, probably not even to Giuliani's legal team.
Lots of news this morning. Have you both walk us through. Von Hilliard, Danny Savalas, thank you both for being in studio with us.
We're going to give you a little bit of a break here for the holiday, perhaps. Or maybe you're working. I don't know. All right. We want to get back to the weather again. The 4th of July travel rush is well underway, with many of you heading out today.
That's right. So Angie Lassman doing double duty for us. She joins us again for a look at your holiday forecast. Hey, Angie.
Hey, guys. When do I get a break? Huh? No, the weather never rests these days, does it? And we've got, of course, we were talking about Hurricane Beryl, but we've got really impressive things happening when it comes to our temperatures over the next couple of days, and life-threatening in some spots. The West especially. Notice all of these heat alerts that we see across the country. 105 million people under those heat alerts at this time. The Southeast, you'll see extreme heat index values today, thanks to some really good tropical moisture that's making its way into that region and bringing our heat index values upwards of 110 in some spots. Like Monroe, 114 is what it'll feel like today. Little Rock, 112. We've got 112 for New Orleans as well. Moving to the West Coast, this is where we'll see actual temperatures well above 100. 110 in Bakersfield from Wednesday through Thursday. We'll see 113 across the board through Friday in Las Vegas. We've got Palm Springs headed to 121 on Friday. Now, of course, they're used to the heat in some of these spots, but this is 10 to 20 degrees above normal for where we usually are for this time of year. It's a busy week. It's a busy weekend ahead with a lot of folks with those outdoor plans. So a heads up there. By the way, we also see our wildfires sparking near homes skyrocket on 4th of July. We've got really warm temperatures and really dry conditions. So just be careful of that over the next couple of days. Speaking of the travel, though, here's a big picture look today. We've got some thunderstorms across the Midwest. We've got some storms across parts of the South. And yes, it's a little muggy there. The East Coast looks pretty good, honestly. Boston to Washington, D.C., we'll see nice conditions. It'll be sunny. It'll be warm. And then that heat but dry conditions out west. Now, what's that mean for the airports? Detroit, St. Louis, New Orleans, and across Florida, those are the spots that I want you to watch for potential delays because of those scattered storms. I'm not expecting a lot of delays in those spots, but again, we could see some of those happening. If you're traveling along I-70 between Pittsburgh and even to Kansas City, that's where you'll want to watch for some slowdowns. Same goes for I-10 across parts of the South with those thunderstorms developing through the day. Meanwhile, 4th of July, yes, unfortunately, heavy rain across the Midwest. We've got thunderstorms for the South. We'll see really uncomfortable conditions for the Southeast and the West. That's not really going to change over the next couple of days. So we'll see the really elevated and above normal temperatures sticking with us for any time that you spend outdoors. So make sure you're taking those frequent breaks. The fireworks, though, this is the all-important forecast, right? And I am so sorry, guys, but it looks like there's rain in the forecast from Washington to Boston. We'll have to try and dodge some of these showers from Minneapolis, Detroit, St. Louis. If you're looking for the dry skies, though, no surprise. Out west, where it is quite warm in Phoenix with 105 at fireworks time, but it will be, in fact, dry.
All right. 105 at 9 p.m.
You betcha.
It's a dry heat. It'll be okay.
It's a dry heat.
Yeah. 100 yesterday in Texas. It's amazing.
All right. Angie, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.